when it's done right, that becomes the enabler and the driver for things like operational excellence and even psychological safety. People talk about safety culture and just culture and psychological safety. What they don't really understand is that all of those are outcomes of good holistic HOP. So if we take leader engagement requires us kind of moving from empowering people to enabling people. And the leaders using values-based engagements. How do the leaders engage better and how do they ask better questions? In error reduction and mitigation, you have to define what you want people to reduce or prevent. Um, you have to be able to understand what you can do about them. And then you have to give people the tools to reduce the probability so that when you integrate in the day-to-day processes, you're not relying on a single individual to not make a mistake. It now becomes how we do business that reduces the probability so that we can, when we fail, understand that it's built into our analysis, the systems, models, processes, and tools, so we don't stop at the human. We learn more from smaller events. We learn more from before events happen, and we use specific questioning methods to get the right answer. And I think learning teams are fantastic when they're used the right way for the right things. If they're not used right, we have seen multiple repeat fatalities after learning teams. And that means that we have to do better human performance-based incident analysis so that we can show the cause and effect relationship, not just to regulators and stakeholders, but what about the families of the people that get hurt, maimed, and killed? We have to have clearly defined process for that. So, and then we've got to go back and revisit those procedures. We've got to look at them for the procedure error drivers. We've got to do that for both our technical and administrative procedures. And you've probably heard this term before, but I want to change it up a little bit. We want to make the right thing easier to do and the wrong thing harder to do, not the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard. What you do is become better at what you're already doing instead of just trying to do a bunch of different things. Make it how you do business and operate off a when, not just if. Because when you give people the option of thinking if something happens, they'll find all kinds of reasons why it might not. But when you force them into talking about when it might happen, that changes the perspective, changes the discussion, and helps you learn more safely, learn to fail more safely, and to put that into your processes. You look at those HOP principles and you think that, what if those were leadership principles instead of HOP principles? Because, when you start labeling something uh, and it turns around, then if somebody has a bad experience with it, they don't, they throw the baby out with the bathwater. But then what if you took those leadership principles and you turned them into leadership behaviors? So now instead of just having a group of HOP principles, which by the way, Todd, when he wrote the book, it's the 5 human performance principles, not the HOP principles that came later. So understanding that the book is written for a great read and has great information in it, but believe it or not, the order does matter when you're talking about leadership behaviors. So this order, error is nothing, error is normal. We've got to understand errors, violations, deviations, and then we don't want to blame because it doesn't fix anything, because we understand that it's the systems that create the context that drives the behaviors so that we can respond instead of react, and then we learn. So when you reorder them a bit and turn them into leader behaviors, you're now not just teaching principles to people, you're teaching leaders what they need to do. You have to be able to go down and have some granularity to each of the elements so that people are actually doing things instead of just thinking in a different way. We've had 5, 10, 15 years of different thinking. Now it's time to behave differently as the leaders in human and organizational performance. So if you go back to Deming, one of the things that he would say is knowing what to do isn't enough. You got to learn how to do it, and that's when it makes a difference. That's no different for human and organizational performance. So you have to have a list of things that you need leaders educated on. You got they have to understand the HOP principles, but how do we use them? What are the science and the practical applications and the methods, systems, processes, and tools? What are the leaders' roles, responsibilities, accountabilities, and authorities, and what tools can they use to create sustainable, improved, or sustainable operational excellence? And how do they start? What are the knowledge, language, and tools that make it work so that when you start educating, integrating, and trying to become sustainable, then your advocates or champions have good roles and responsibilities so that you move people from being empowered, we've told you what you should do and what we expect you to do, to enabled, we've given you the capability and capacity to do those things as an individual. I'll never forget, my boss sat me down one day. He said, Rob, remember, to them, you are only just 2 weeks smarter than they are. I'll just let that sit for a second, because they were used to me going out and bringing back, going out and bringing back. So when I had language, knowledge, and behavior that would help them, they didn't necessarily take it well from me. So it's almost like looking at them and thinking, are you smarter than a fifth grader? But actually, are you smarter than your HOP champion? That's kind of the way they feel. They're willing to be in that competition because they want to be leaders that are out there. So sometimes you need outside help. Sometimes you need additional help. Just make sure it's the right outside help for what you need. Don't be afraid to ask for help. We're a great community, and the CHOL is a group that helps you get the right people to help you where you need it. But as the leader in your organization, you can't avoid the fact that sometimes they think you're just 2 weeks smarter than they are. And sometimes our leaders, they will sponsor HOP like Kellogg sponsors a NASCAR. But there's a huge difference between sponsoring HOP and driving it. And what we need to understand is how to get our leaders to be actively engaged in driving human organizational performance, not just sponsoring it. Sponsoring it means, hey, we'll give you the resources and then I'm out of it. Driving it means we understand the systems, methods, processes, and tools that we as leaders can use to make this work. The full task-based system is that on any task at any time, we're surrounded by other people, programs, processes, work environment, organization, equipment. We're surrounded by our individual drivers and our systemic drivers, and we have to manage the physical hazards, the energy that creates serious injuries and fatalities and produce harm. The organizations that have done this really well, it's part of their hiring practices that they verify that the person either does understand it. I'm talking all the way up to vice presidents. I've watched a CEO go through basic HOP principles at the worker level as they're coming in the door. So when an organization, when you get human resources on board, that these are the kind of people we're looking for, and they are either willing to lead this way, or we're going to look for somebody else. That's a vital piece of the sustainability for human and organizational. If you think about it, it's why it's been around 30 years, because you've got leaders that will actually do that. Thanks for that.